Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalists podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus. And together, we are the Minimalists.
Yes, we are. Welcome to episode number 39. Shh. Ryan, today we're going to talk about noise. Let's talk about what is noise. What do we mean by noise? Because when you hear that word noise, you think about what? You think about the auditory stimuli. But I think broadly, we're going to talk more about just all stimuli, right? Like what's going on in the world around us. So it could be visual noise. It can be actual noise. It can be kinesthetic noise, where you know you're walking through crowds of people, you're at a concert, you're in a busy city or whatever. It can be also this internal noise, you know, all of the thoughts and feelings, emotions, the internal clutter or internal noise, what we have going on in our head as well, but also what we're feeling in terms of the rest of our body. The pain can be a particular kind of noise. For me, I have tinnitus in my right ear, and it's not really bad. Like, I know some people get it to where it's just constantly ringing all the time, no matter what. But if I'm in a quiet place, just my right ear is constantly ringing. It's just a constant bell in my ear. So there's that kind of noise as well. So today, I want to just talk to you about stimuli and noise and what's going on inside, what's going on outside, and how do we calm all of that? How do we sort of turn down the volume? I'm going to start with there's an excerpt in our book, Everything That Remains. It's a quick paragraph here. The 5th chapter of Everything That Remains is a chapter called Strong Moves Slow, which I think is an appropriate metaphor for everything we're going to be talking about today. But in June of 2010, I had been simplifying my life for about 6 months then. It was shortly after my mother died and my marriage ended, and I'd been just exploring quieting my life by getting rid of the excess stuff. And I took this business trip to New York City, and I was there for like 4 days, but it felt like much longer because there was just this constant noise. And so this is a brief excerpt talking about the noise all around us. It had been quiet on the subway. What a nice surprise. Of course, I didn't comprehend the silence until now. After already exiting the J train, I'm approaching Times Square, swimming vigorously against the stream of people and the spill of electric light. Everything seems caffeinated. I am here, beneath the howl of the world, the pulse of a city dead inside, and yet all this noise is unable to wake the dead. Heads tilt downward, faces lost in glowing screens, technology turning people into zombies. The lights ripple in the high noon heat, bending and flickering and dancing all around me, overwhelming and unforgiving, sucking the polluted oxygen from the air, spitting fluorescent fumes, a rainbow of glow that rivals the sun in the cerebral sky overhead. So when I was there, I remember going to Times Square, walking to Times Square through all of that, and it was just overwhelming. And I think we're in a place now where noise has become the default setting in our lives. And so when we're thinking about how do we quiet that, we're really talking about resetting our default setting most of the time. And so let's answer some questions today. Our first voicemail is from Betsy in Muncie, Indiana.
I just had a question about how you guys kind of deal with some negative emotions. I work as an advocate for domestic violence and sexual assault victims, it's something that I'm really passionate about and something that I, am really happy to spend a lot of my time doing and cultivating that passion and working in that field. But I also find that it brings a lot of negative emotions and things that can kind of cloud up my emotions for other things in my life. And I find that it kind of creeps into all areas and affects my mood at a lot of times. So I wondered how you guys deal with that and kind of compartmentalizing those emotions, or maybe just learning how to, live in a simple way where you can kind of separate those things out from other areas of your life.
So those emotions you're feeling are definitely a type of noise. And so when I think about, well, first off, Betsy, let me say thank you for what you do. I mean, you're doing some really important work. You're contributing to your community there, but contributing to the world around you. And I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate that.
Amen.
And I know the people that you're helping certainly appreciate it as well, even if they're not always able to communicate that. And they may not realize that you're experiencing these emotions, because often we don't wear our heart on our sleeve, and often it's not good to do that. But also you mentioned, well, how do I compartmentalize these emotions? And I'll tell you, throughout my 20s, I was a Mozart of compartmentalization. I never wore my heart on my sleeves, and I would try to constantly just sort of, well, I'm going to box up this emotion and put it over here and this there, over there. That's the wrong thing for us to do, because what we're doing, it's like the metaphor of sweeping the dirt under the rug. The dirt is still there. You've just moved it somewhere else. You've compartmentalized the dirt, and I think we can do that with our emotions. And then, of course, there are unfortunate consequences that peek their head around the corner, and it's not right away. So you don't experience the negative effects right away. It may be a year later, a decade later, or several decades later, where all of a sudden you have this realization that, wow, I hid that emotion instead of trying to deal with it. And so what I would say is recognize the emotion for what it is, and also recognize the positive emotions that you get from this. More importantly, your life is basically what you focus on. And so while we can recognize the negative emotion that you're feeling, if it's sadness or if it's anger or if it's distress, realize that many of those emotions, even if they're negative emotions, they can be beneficial because they allow us to make a change. What we don't want to do, however, is wallow in the sorrow. And so you want to notice those peak emotions as well. I say peak intentionally here. It's like if you see a mountain, you can't have the mountain without the valley. And so these negative emotions of the valley, the key is not to wallow in those emotions. I know Ryan and we just did this podcast episode about the election. And I heard from a lot of people who have been wallowing. They have been upset with the outcome for whatever reason, because maybe they really liked Hillary, or maybe they just really dislike Donald Trump or whatever, and they've wallowed in this sorrow. And I don't think suffering is productive. I think it's okay to feel pain, but then do something about that pain. You want to focus on something, figure out what the meaning of the thing is. What's the meaning of this emotion? And then take action on that. And then, more importantly, let's find out what emotions that you're experiencing that are happy, that we produce more of those. So we have more peaks on the overall landscape. And realize that many of these emotions you have control over. You can't change the things you don't have control over, but you do have control over your emotions. And it's just like a muscle. You can train yourself to over time experience fewer negative emotions, or experience those negative emotions for a shorter duration. And if you're doing that, if you're not wallowing in it, if you're staying in that valley for a short period of time, but then ascending the mountain after that, you can experience more of the positive without suffering through a lot of the negative.
Yeah, Betsy, when I was listening to your comment, I just thought to myself, wow, like here is a gal who is taking the world on her shoulders. Well, I mean, maybe not the entire world, but the people that you interact with, you are taking a lot of their world on and putting it on your shoulders. And the first thing I ask myself is, well, who's taking it on for Betsy? So I think that's the only thing I would add here is find someone that you can, kind of dump these experiences on, whether it's a friend or a family member, or even if it's a therapist. I mean, there's nothing wrong with seeing someone on a weekly, bi-weekly basis to just kind of unload all your emotions on. I used to do that in the corporate world, and it was really, really helpful. It's not like a catch-all. I think this is just one ingredient to getting that noise to silence that noise. But I think it's a great step to help you do that, Betsy.
Betsy, thank you for your question. I'd love to give you a copy of our book, Essential. It's an essay collection. Ryan and I wrote 150 essays about 12 different topics, everything from minimalism and stuff to success. But also we have a chapter in there about mindfulness, and I think that chapter will help you quiet some of the noise and deal with some of the negative emotions that you have so you can experience more joy and more satisfaction in the work that you're doing. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for your question. Our next question is from Jessica in North Carolina.
I think for as long as I can remember, I've been using, I guess you would say, white noise to help me get to sleep. Usually this takes the form of something that reminds me of conversations had in another room, just kind of lulls me to sleep. Recently, about for the past year, it's taken on the form of listening to old sci-fi TV episodes, things that I've seen hundreds of times. So I'm not interested in actually staying up and seeing what happens, but I play it on my on a video app on my phone, listen to it on my earphones, turn it down to barely audible, and flip the phone upside down so I don't actually see it. My husband, sort of half joking, half serious, says that I have a problem and that I should be maybe listening to something that I would learn something, maybe suggesting y'all's podcast. But for me, that's kind of the opposite of what I'm trying to do, because if I listen to your podcast, then I'm interested in what you have to say and I don't go to sleep. So I guess the point is, could you help us sort of settle our debate? Do I need minimalist therapy for my white noise addiction, or am I getting value added from my audio-only sci-fi sleep assistance?
Jessica, I don't know, what should she do here? I mean, I don't know what you should do. What I'll say is this. If I was sleeping, trying to sleep, listening to old sci-fi shows, I would not get very good sleep. I know whenever I have, whenever I've tried to sleep with the TV on in the background, it's like the shows kind of dictate my dreams, and I really don't get like a fully restful sleep. But Jessica, that doesn't mean that this isn't a good tactic for you. I mean, if it works, great. That would not work for me personally. I'll tell you what I personally do is I do have like a fan that will provide some white noise, which really helps. And then also Mariah and I, we have a sleep meditation that we'll use. And Sean will put that in the show notes for anyone out there who's interested in it. It's kind of cheesy, but it works. It's like this very like soothing, music, and like kind of like this. Think of the most like cliche, meditation, guided meditation that you can think of. Like it's very much like that. But but that's just kind of the point, though. It's banal. Yeah. And it's something that is a lot easier to fall asleep to. So Jessica, I don't have anything I'm going to tell you that you should or shouldn't do.
I do.
Of course you do.
It's funny you mentioned the sleep meditation. I've tried that with Bex, and I mean she has totally changed the way she sleeps. But when I first met her and we first started dating, she was literally the worst person I've ever seen in terms of like falling asleep and insomnia, and so it's so easy for me to fall asleep at night. It's not always easy for me to stay asleep, but I will fall asleep instantly at night. And so doing a meditation at night, like we would be 30 seconds in and I'm snoring and she'd just get upset. So you got to make sure that's not it. Jessica, first thing you asked about your husband, and you said is he right or am I right? Well, your husband's wrong. And of course, you don't want to tell him that. So maybe if you want to play this back to him, I'll tell him he's wrong. That's okay. And the reason he's wrong is because what you're doing isn't working for you, right? And I agree with Ryan. If what you were doing worked and you were getting great sleep, but clearly it's not working because you're calling in and you're asking about this, and you said you need some white noise to fall asleep. I think that's fine. In fact, I'll recommend some things that will help you go to sleep, but a few things you don't want to do. You don't want to turn your brain on at night. So listening to engaging podcasts, if our podcast puts you to sleep, then we have a different problem. But it sounds like what you're saying is our podcast wouldn't put you to sleep, and you don't want to engage what we call the monkey mind, right? The monkey brain. You don't want that. You want something that's going to put you in a state that allows you to be more creative, more imaginative. So first thing I want to recommend is, yes, if you want to do something before bed, maybe read some fiction. And we have a list of many of my favorite novels and short story collections over at theminimalists.com/recommendations. There's a bunch of book recommendations there. We can put that in the show notes for you as well. But you want to do something that's going to turn your mind off. So it could be the meditation. It could be reading fiction. There's a bunch of things that you don't want to do. Speaking of reading, by the way, let me go back for a second. You may want to get your husband to read to you. I know that I do that often at night with Becca. Well, I'll read a short story to her, or read something that I've been generally something that's fiction. And I'll read that to her, and I know that definitely helps out if we're reading at night. But here are some things that you want to do. You talked about white noise. Well, the best thing that I found for white noise is something called a Dome sound conditioner. That's DOHM. But we'll put a link to the one that I use in the show notes. I got this for Becca, and it plugs into the wall, but it's not making noise it's not a speaker. It's a series of fans, and the National Sleep Association, it's the official sort of noise conditioner or sound conditioner of the National Sleep Association. And man, it creates just this great white noise that is not overpowering, but especially when we were living over by where the trains are, I mean, that helped out a lot. But even now, like it's far less noisy outside, but any little thing will wake up Becca. And so the sound conditioner helps out with that. Here are a bunch of other things that have helped Bex over the last year or two. She has a sleep mask. I have a sleep mask as well. I use a really nice one that is it wraps around your ears, and it's really soft. I'll put a link to the one that I use in the show notes. I also use some earplugs called Earpiece, like PEACE, piece, earpiece. Blackout curtains are important so you don't get any light in. In fact, you want to reduce all of the light, especially the blue light that you're experiencing in the evenings, to reset your circadian rhythm. And to do that, you want to have no screen time after it gets dark. Because what happens is this the blue light in your TV or your phone or wherever, it triggers your brain to make you think it's still light outside, it's still sunny out, and because it's still sunny out, you want to be awake, and so it makes it harder to go to sleep and harder to stay asleep as well. So you can install something on your computer. It's free. It's called Flux. It's a screen. Basically, it puts a filter on your screen that removes all the blue light, so you can do that on your computer. It's just f.lux is the website. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And we've talked about this before, but let's talk about it again. The Calm stuff, Ryan, I know you've been using that. It seems like that's been working for you pretty well. It's like magnesium.
Yeah, it's like every little thing that you just mentioned, it adds like a significant, a little significant increase to like my sleep. So like the Calm helps a little bit. The eye mask helps a little bit. Right. The earplugs help a little bit.
Yes. All these incremental changes.
Yeah. Melatonin helps a little bit. So like all that stuff added up, yeah, it works really, really, really well.
So think about that. If you're making,
I cannot sleep until noon like I used to when I was in high school. Not that I want to sleep until noon. Right.
It just wouldn't be possible.
But I can get a solid like 7 or 8 hours now with very little tossing and turning compared to if I didn't use any of that stuff.
Yeah, I try to make sure I get 8 to 9 hours every night, especially since I've been trying to heal my body and my back. A few other things that help me. So you've got the Calm we just talked about. It's just a powder you put into warm water at night. It's magnesium. If you want to do melatonin, I would encourage you to cycle on and off of that. I know, Sean, you've been doing that recently, and that has helped our podcast, Sean, our producer here. He has been doing some melatonin supplementation, and you can do that. Start off really small. What is it, like 3 milligrams or something? Yeah, so start off small. You can do a little spray under your tongue, or the pills will work as well. But you don't want to become dependent on that either. So it's good to cycle on, cycle off with that. Also, something that Bex uses is something called New Mood, which has L-tryptophan and some other stuff in it that helps with serotonin production, and which helps her sleep as well. A few other things that I do: stretching right before I go to bed, because I have back pain. So anyone who has any pain at night, the stretching really helps. Also, putting a pillow between my legs at night helps me stay asleep because of my back pain. And I will do a sauna often at night. In fact, I'm going to a sauna tonight to just feel better and detox, and also helps out with my hormones and my mood regulation and everything. But the sauna at night helps me stay asleep longer and feel more calm. Also, put your devices in airplane mode, or I would just say get your phone out of the bedroom altogether. Certainly don't have a TV in your bedroom. Bed is meant for two things, neither of which are watching reruns. And so
it's crazy how the articles that have come out about how the Wi-Fi signal, and how so even if you have a modem that's in your room for internet, unplug that.
Yeah. So
the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi signal from your phone, the cellular signal from your phone. There's studies that show how much that interrupts people's sleep patterns.
Yeah, the EMFs. So it has a lot of potential downsides. So anything that's Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Yeah. We have a light switch that turns off our Wi-Fi at night, and so you can do any of these things, and like Ryan said, it's incremental. So you make a 10% change, or 10 degree change, right? So the thing about that is, if you make 10 degree changes, you've made a 100-degree shift in your sleep pattern. And so all of these little things, they add up and they count.
Let's talk about what not to do. Don't drink alcohol before you go to bed. That's one of the worst things to do. It's funny because when I was younger, I used to think I'll just have a little glass of whiskey, or I'll have a couple beers, and it helps you get to sleep. But the problem is you don't really stay asleep, and the sleep you do get is not good sleep. The other thing too is don't eat before bed.
Yes.
Eating, what is it, within 3 hours, 2 hours?
Yeah,
something like that.
And longer if you can. So if you can go 4 or 5 hours, because what's happening is your body has to then expend energy to, instead of recovering, and that's what sleep is for, is recovering at night. It's then trying to digest all of the food that you ate, an hour before you went to bed, and so it makes it more difficult for your body to experience rest for sure.
What else? What else shouldn't we do? Don't watch TV. What else?
Yeah, I mean, avoid any light. So dim the lights at night, and try to have as few lights as possible. In fact, we use a few amber lights, so without any blue light in it, so that we can still see at night, because in Montana it gets dark at 4:30 p.m. in the winter, and so having some amber light, which still allows you to illuminate your house. And then going back to reading, I think reading will really help you. In fact, Jessica, let me, I usually don't send this to anyone, but let me send you a copy. I wrote a novel in my 20s. It's called As a Decade Fades, and we'll give you either the print or ebook version on that. And maybe my book will help you get to sleep. It's some of the best writing I ever did in my 20s, and it's completely different from any of the minimalist stuff that we've done. But it's a book I was really proud of, and so hopefully that'll get your creative mind working and help you get into that. Ryan, right before we started recording, we talked about the alpha brain waves versus the beta brain waves. So when you sleep, you experience these alpha brain waves, and when you wake up in the morning, you're in flux between alpha brain waves and beta brain waves. And so at night, what you're trying to do is transition back in. And I think reading some sort of a fiction or stories will help you in that process, transition from wakefulness to restful sleep. Our next question is from Lindsay in Indiana.
How a minimalist when you have a mental illness. I have ADHD and have a mind that moves faster than anything you can imagine. I very much want to slow down my brain and the things I own so that those don't fog up my mind. I'm so wrapped up in the moment and don't think about the world that is going around me. I am also in management and can't seem to tame or figure out how to tackle the paper beast that it takes for me to kind of stay on track. Are there any tips that you can give to help the mental mind clutter, the paper clutter, and all the stuff in general that ensues with ADHD?
I think the first thing we want to do is reframe what we're talking about. I think Tony Robbins would say, decisions, not conditions, determine our destiny. And what you're saying right now is I have a condition, and it's a limiting belief, basically. And so we want to change that belief. Yes, you may have ADHD, and I'm sure Ryan will be able to talk about that. And it's easy for me to say, I have OCD, and that's a limiting belief in my own life. Whenever I think about these conditions that determine my life, I realize I need to make different decisions about what I focus on, what I find meaning in, and so I can take actions accordingly. And you can realize that the language that we use, instead of calling your condition ADHD, instead of calling it a mental illness, let's acknowledge that you learn differently as a person, and that can be beneficial to you. Yes, your brain may work more quickly than other people, but that in many instances, that is a benefit, not a bug. And so that's a feature of someone who can engage more quickly, who can problem solve more quickly. In fact, you can look at a lot of people who have supposed ADHD and realize that they're some of the most productive and successful people. Look at Silicon Valley. I mean, everyone there has ADHD, and they're wildly successful in many senses. They're making an impact on the world that many of us can only dream of, because they've taken that condition that they have and decided that, you know what, this is a benefit for me. In terms of slowing down, I mean, you can look at the research. There's been a lot of research that talks about K through 12 meditation has helped a lot of kids with ADHD. So if you haven't tried meditation yet, you'll want to start with a meditation app like Headspace or 10% Happier, or Sam Harris has a couple of free guided meditations, a 9-minute one, a 27-minute one. We have links to those on our website, theminimalists.com/Sam. We did an interview with him on that. And also, in terms of more research, they found out, especially for kids, that exercise is really important for kids with ADHD. So I'm assuming adults with ADHD, it's going to be the same thing. So you may want to consider yoga. I think that kills two birds with one stone here, because you get the physical aspect, and it can be rigorous, especially something like hot yoga. It can be really rigorous, but it also gives you that mental calmness as well. So it turns down the noise physically and mentally at the same time. A few other things that I might recommend. We already talked about a sauna, but I'll do mindfulness meditation in the sauna as long as no one else is there. I go to the YMCA for the sauna, so sometimes there are other people there. But if there isn't, I will do mindfulness meditation in the sauna. Ryan, this past weekend I had to go out. It was actually on Monday. I had to go to Spokane to get some blood work done. Mm-hmm. And so Bex and I went out there. We just made Spokane's like the closest city to where we live. I mean, it's a city, right? We live in a city, I suppose. But like, if you want access to everyday city kind of things, you tend to go to Spokane or even Seattle. But we went out to Spokane and decided to make sort of a day trip out of it. And I did several things that really helped calm my mind. So I went floating. I'm really looking forward to doing a float tank once they come here, because it's just like a sauna. You get benefit from it one time, but you get far more benefit from doing a float tank if you can do it 2, 3, 4 times a week.
I love floating. Out of the hour, there's 15 minutes that I love.
Yeah. Well, because why though?
Because you start to relax.
Yeah. But at first, it like turns up the volume. And you realize, like, oh my God, there's so much noise in my head, and also noise in my body too, right? Because float tanks are for those of you who aren't acquainted with it, a float tank is sensory deprivation, right? And so you're floating in 93 or 94 degree water that is the same temperature as your skin. It is pitch black, so you can't see anything, you can't feel anything. There's no noise, so you can't hear anything. And so you feel like, oh, I didn't realize my knee was aching today. And my back is hurting more than I realized. And what are all these thoughts in my head? And they're zooming. You feel, for a person who doesn't have ADHD, you feel like all of a sudden you do, because you've turned everything else down, and the only sensation is what's going on inside your body. And so float tanks, they turn everything up so that you can turn everything down. So I definitely recommend that. I also did cryotherapy while I was out there. There's finally a cryo place in Spokane, which is pretty awesome. The guy who runs it, Pat at Spokane Cryo and Health, he's a really, really great guy, just like really funny. And it's in the middle of this weird little plaza thing. It's like in the back of a building somewhere, and you just go in. But it was great. And for me, I was talking to Becca about this, because for her, and many people, they do cryotherapy, and it's like, it's terrifying, where it's really cold. It's negative 230 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 minutes. For me, it's a meditative experience. I don't know if you experience that whenever you've done cryo, but it because you're...
The first time it's shocking. I mean,
it really is.
Yeah, the first time it's like, I mean, that's why they allow you to go only like a minute or two. They won't even let you do the full time. Yeah. Because of how shocking it is the first time. But yeah, like once you get used to it and you realize, like, okay, it's like mentally, you're not going to die. Like intellectually, you understand this, but as soon as that cold hits your body, like your body doesn't understand that. Right. So there is this like initial wave of like panic, but like once your body gets used to it and like realizes like, okay, I'm not going to die, then yeah, it is certainly a meditative experience. But yeah, that first time is not so meditative, I would say.
No, I agree with that. It's psychological, but once you know that, like, okay, this is going to be fine, and yes, it's going to be cold. Negative 230 degrees is really freaking cold. Mm-hmm. Although I'll tell you, it's not as miserable as taking an ice bath.
No, not at all.
And on last episode, the gift giving episode, I talked about. And speaking of gift giving, these are all things we're talking about right now. These are great gifts you can give someone. Float tank, like sensory deprivation. Sure. Is something that's great. Cryotherapy, if you have it nearby, is an interesting gift that you can experience with someone else. But I found that the first time I did cryo, like, yeah, it was really cold. But it was still better than doing an ice bath.
Dude, an ice bath sucks every single time.
Well, almost every time. So when I go to the Russian bathhouse, Voda Spa in Los Angeles, they have what is colder than an ice bath. It's 30 degrees.
It's a plunge tank.
It's salinated plunge pool. You go from 220 degrees, you're sweating your butt off, and then you go from that to 30 degrees, and it is euphoric.
How long do you stay in the plunge pool?
I will often stay a minute. But man, once you get past a minute, like once you get past 10 seconds, it's like, oh my goodness, like this is really, really terrifyingly cold. But and then when you get out, you spend 5 minutes just sitting down. It is euphoria. I mean, it's really amazing because, and also it really helps it boost your immune system, which is a nice benefit. For me, I do it for pain management. So my back's really bad, so I do cryotherapy. It radically reduces inflammation, it radically reduces the pain that I have. And a lot of athletes do it for quicker recovery. The same reason they would do an ice bath or anything like that. But these are different ways to all we're saying here, Ryan, is find ways to change your state. You're in a pattern right now. You change your state to break that pattern, and that will help you reorganize, reconstitute your thoughts, and ultimately turn down the noise.
Yeah, Lindsay, she posited her question, how can you be a minimalist, or is it possible to be a minimalist? That's what it was. Is it possible to be a minimalist when you have a mental illness? And, I just want to, reiterate what minimalism is. It's about using your resources consciously, using them deliberately. And the resource, I should say, that you're asking about specifically is your attention. And I can tell you that being ADHD myself, it's very important for me to be deliberate with my attention. So I'll tell you, first and foremost, the most important thing for me is having something to do, like having my day planned out. Because I'll tell you, my ADHD really, really flares up when I have nothing to do. It's like if I'm sitting there and I don't have something to do for a couple hours, then I want to do a million different things. And what ends up happening is I kind of get frozen with too many choices, and then I'll just sit and veg. I'll get on Facebook or get on YouTube or whatever. So I'll say, if you don't have a schedule in your life right now, get a schedule. That is something that really, really helps me. Like I'll tell you what a typical day for me, what it looks like. Now, this is a typical day. This isn't every single day. I'm not perfect with it. But most days I will wake around 7:30 a.m. I will make some coffee, make some tea for Mariah, and then we are off to the gym. And then after the gym, I'll come home, shower, get ready, and then by 10:30-ish, I will either be reading or I will be writing, or sometimes I will catch up on email, just depending on what my day is like. And then from there, basically between 12 and 6 p.m., I am either mentoring, I am reading, I'm writing, or I am, doing social media. That's usually when I check social media, is usually around 5 p.m. So those are things that it's not this super strict schedule, but what I have are very, very limited options to choose from. So I usually do about 2 to 3 mentoring appointments a day, so that takes up the majority of that afternoon time. But if I have an open afternoon, then guess what? I can be reading, writing, or checking up on email. So I would say limit your options and use a schedule. By far, going over the schedule the day before helps me to plan that out a lot better as well. And I think this can carry over to your just this approach of having a tool to help you. I think this can carry over to your paper issue that you talked about having at work. Get a system down with your paper. Like right now, I'm just imagining her having these 6-foot stacks of paper on her desk where she can barely even fit a laptop on there or something. If that's the case, then yeah, it's going to take a lot of work to get those stacks of paper organized. But once you get a system down, whether it's scanning them, whether it's archiving them and putting them in boxes. And I remember at our old jobs, mm-hmm. Josh, we had at our retail stores, we had all that customer paperwork we had to hold on to, contracts,
boxes,
and
receipts, mountains of boxes.
Right. And what we would do is we would literally put them in a box. Okay, this is December. And then we would, call whatever company it was to come and pick it up, and they would archive that work.
We had a system.
We had a system in place. So yes, the initial work is going to be, it's going to be hard. But once you get that out of the way and start implementing your system, Lindsay, whether it's with the schedule or whether it's with, your papers, I promise you, it will help. It will help during those times when you're feeling like your ADHD is flaring up. If you've got a system in place, it definitely helps quiet the mind.
2 things you reminded me of there, Ryan. One is Greg McEwen wrote a book called Essentialism, and in there, in the book he talks about designing your week, and so he said, a month is too far out because it's like trying to plan your year. Yes, you can take broad strokes, but you don't want to plan an entire month in advance. And you don't want to plan just a day in advance because then you get caught up in the inputs of everyone else. And I think that's important to think about with a lot of what we're doing. A lot of this noise, it means we're just responding to it. So what Ryan just said, if you have an hour to kill, basically, and what often do we do? Your average person checks email 150 times a day now at work. 150 times a day.
That used to be us, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, in fact, we were on the high end of things. So the supposed high performers check their email as often as 900 times a day.
Wow.
But let's do the math on that. That's once a minute, every minute for 16 hours straight.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So what happens? That is noise, but it's us allowing other people to dictate our day.
Yeah.
And so if you're really struggling with all of this noise, quite often it's because other people are dictating your day and you don't even realize it. It might be people in your social media feed. It could be your email. It can be the news, because the news is what? It's shocking. It's titillating. It's always trying to get us to click here, click here. You don't, if you see a news story from BuzzFeed or whatever and it says, today's a good day, you're probably not going to click on it. But if you see the thing that says, terrorist threat is looming in Missoula, Montana, you're going to click on it, because all of a sudden it's supposed to jolt you. That's what they're trying to do. They're dictating not only your day, but they're dictating your emotions. And I think it's important to remove ourselves from that. Back to the and I think the way to remove ourselves from that is to plan out your week in advance. Having a weekly design session, as Greg McEwen calls it, to design your week around what your priorities are, and don't let other people dictate your priorities. And also in that book, he talks about the term priority. Yeah, up until the 20th century, the word literally means the thing before, priority, the thing prior. And think about that for a second. The first thing is what it means. And not until the 20th century did we say, well, that's more than one thing. It's no longer our priority. It's a whole set of priorities. Now, Ryan and I did a whole episode on priorities. You can go back and check that out in our podcast feed. But we want to have as few priorities as possible. In order to do that, we can design what our week looks like. Schedule downtime, schedule time for yourself, because sometimes the things that don't seem productive, alone time or restful time, those things are productive, because the word product. What's the product? Well, I am feeling more restful. That is a product of having rest time, and that allows you to better perform in other areas of your life. So schedule in that rest, schedule in the alone time, schedule in time with friends, schedule a time for your health, and you can do that early on in the week so that you feel good about the productivity of your week.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway here, because like going over my schedule, for example, it works for me, but it could be a little confusing for some. But I think the biggest takeaway here is to be proactive. Like, I mean, if that's the one piece of advice, I guess, Lindsay, I could really give you that helps me with my ADHD, is being proactive as much as possible.
And back to the paperwork, the mountains of paperwork, if it is too much for you to deal with, there's a company called $1scan.com. They are not a sponsor. I've not used them personally, but I've had a lot of our readers comment about them. And so if you're not wanting to do a scanning party, you can see what scanner I use for all the paperwork that Ryan and I have used. We've done a scanning party of our own. We wrote about that at theminimalists.com/scanning, and you could find the exact paper scanner that I use. You could feed papers into it really quickly with that scanner. But if you don't want to do that, you can send off boxes of your own paperwork and old books and everything else to $1scan.com. It's the number $1scan.com. Last thing I'll tell you, Lindsay, is anxiety. This anxiety that you're feeling, it is often tied to our memories. What does that mean? It means we're spending a lot of time in the past, and we're not going to get where we're going. We're not going to get to the destination if we're constantly living in the rearview mirror. So instead, let's keep our eyes on the road, keep our eyes on the journey ahead of us. Let's try to live in the moment. Let's live right now and occasionally glance toward the horizon of what's going on in the future. One question to ask yourself is this useful? So if you're experiencing an emotion, if you're experiencing a thought, if you feel that there is too much paper clutter in your life, ask yourself those three words. Is this useful? And our friend Dan Harris talks about this in our documentary. So, Lindsay, there's a whole mindfulness section in our documentary called Minimalism. We'll either send you the online version. It's on iTunes and Amazon and Google Play and Vimeo and all those places. You can find that at minimalismfilm.com, but we'll send you a copy of that, or we'll send you the DVD. It just came out on DVD as well. So either way, Lindsay, we hope you find some value in that. Our next question is from Nora in Ithaca, New York.
I just wanted to ask if you guys could talk about how being a minimalist, how that can be possible when you're literally in this bubble of people that aren't minimalists. And also, I know that you guys came from corporate jobs, and I think that's really, really impressive. But I also was very much consumer driven. I spent hundreds of dollars on skincare products, beauty products, clothing, things that I really didn't need. And that transition can be, I think, a lot more difficult than if you were, already pretty simple and now you just wanted to take that extra step. So basically 2 issues I would like you to address. The first is how to be a minimalist when everyone around you is just wealthier, and, when it comes down to, people's items are define their social status. And when you're in college, when you're in this bubble, it's not as easy as, when you're living alone or, when you have opportunity to change. And then the second one is, how do you do that when you were so hardcore consumer driven?
Nora, my advice would be get out of your bubble. Like that's step number 1. I mean, we talked about that during our podcast called Blame when we were talking about the election and how important it is to seek out differences of opinions. So there's a couple ways you can get out of your bubble. You could go. I don't know how close Ithaca is to Buffalo or Rochester. It's
not too far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's basically you can go to minimalist.org and you can click on Buffalo or Rochester, whichever is closer, and you can plan to meet with that minimalist group. They meet once a month, so it's something you could plan well in advance for. Or if you don't have time to drive an hour or two, however long it takes to get to one of those places, you can certainly go to meetup.com and search for different groups in your area. And here's what I would say too, Nora, is yes, go seek out people who are like-minded, open-minded, who do want to live a simple life, who wants to incorporate minimalism into their life. But I'd also encourage you to go hang out with people who you could see yourself never hanging out with. Let's say it's a theater group, and you can never see yourself acting or even being interested in theater. Well, just go hang out with those guys. Get a different perspective. Get a different get a different opinion on things. And no matter what, that's an important thing, I think, for life in general, is to not put yourself in a bubble of just people who agree with you 100% of the time. To answer your second question about how to be a minimalist when you're so you're such a
consumer.
You're such a consumer. You're so, what did she say? Consumer driven, so hard consumer driven, I think is what she said. You've discovered some unmeaningful habits that you have in your life, and you want to change that. So, the first question I would ask is, what are some meaningful habits you'd like to incorporate with your new approach to life? And just pick one of those to start with, just one. So if it's, you want to contribute more, you go to the soup kitchen, go to, Habitat for Humanity, go out and do those things. And the more that you incorporate good habits into your life, there won't be as much room for the bad habits. So, just start with one thing and keep kind of piling on from there once you feel like you can add another thing.
I agree with going slowly there, but it's about starting now, right? Changing the focus now, slowly surrounding yourself with new people. So Ryan mentioned minimalist.org. We have free local meetup groups in 100 cities in 8 different countries. You can just go to minimalist.org and find a meetup group that is close to you. And if you can't find one close to you, we do an online meetup once a month over at minimalist.org. We have an online city. And we just call it the online city. And so you can connect with thousands of other people who will help support you. And that's really what you want to do. You're surrounding yourself with people who have similar values. They're not always like-minded, but they tend to be open-minded. And so identify what your values are and surround yourself with people who have similar values. Ryan and I tend to have different beliefs, but we have the same values. We even have different interests, and that's okay. But if you put yourself in a group, a new bubble, or expand your bubble to people with the similar values as you, and by the way, you're at the best time to do this. You're in college where people tend to be a lot more open-minded to change. You get a group of people who are in their 80s or 90s, they're less likely to make a change. Is it possible? Sure it is. We've had people in their 90s show up at events and say, I'm just becoming a minimalist for the first time in my life. It's less likely, though. You're at a time of exploration right now. Take advantage of that exploration. You don't have to necessarily leap up and call yourself a minimalist. It's one of the most difficult things you can do, actually, because other people think you're going to kill yourself or whatever. Oh, you're getting rid of your stuff. Well, no, you can just start simplifying your life and then show other people the benefits of what you're experiencing. You don't have to say, look at me, I'm becoming a minimalist, and I need you to share my values. No, you can go find other people who have similar values. One of my favorite lines from our book, Everything That Remains, is you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. And what I mean by that is you can't try to change someone, even though you love them, you care about them. You can't change that person, but you can change the group of people that you associate with and start associating with people who you aspire to be like. And I think it's important to surround yourself with people who are similar to the person you want to become. That's going to help you grow. It's also going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel a lot of discomfort at first. You're going to put yourself in what I like to call the discomfort zone. But that's the place from which you grow the most. And the more you grow, the more you have to give. The more you give, the more you grow. And it's a really beautiful cycle. Also, the last thing I'll say is there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with consumption. We all need some stuff, right? The problem is compulsory consumption or compulsive consumption. And so don't think of yourself as a consumer. Think of yourself as a citizen who often needs to buy things to live, and that's okay. But the things that we surround ourselves with, we shouldn't try to find meaning in those things. Those things should simply augment our experience of life. And if we consume less, that opens up more time for creativity. And the more we create, generally, there are a lot of studies that show the more we create, the happier that we feel. And so if you're consuming less, creating more, you're probably going to feel a lot happier. You mentioned Ryan's and my journey from the corporate world. So we both grew up really poor and then climbed the corporate ladder, made a lot of money doing that throughout our 20s, and then eventually realized that wasn't making us happy, and we had to transition into a life that wasn't consumer-driven, but was a simpler life, a life of more meaning. Ryan and I wrote about that journey, those 5 years of our lives, from suit and tie corporate guys, and also our childhoods, and the drugs and alcohol and all that stuff was going on in childhood level, growing up poor, and then our journey from these suit and tie corporate guys to becoming minimalists and then the minimalists. We wrote about that in a book called Everything That Remains. And Nora, I'd love to send you a copy of that. The first 7 chapters really cover that transition in detail, from these suit and tie corporate guys to changing our habits, not just getting rid of bad habits, but replacing them with better ones. Our next question is from Victoria in Findlay, Ohio.
My question today is about criticism. I heard you guys were reaching out if we had any comments, and I'm an INTJ, Myers-Briggs personality test, and so for me, criticism is something I love and I thrive on, and I look for that, and I want people to give me criticism, constructing criticism, I'll put it that way, because that is how I can be self-aware and self-develop in that area. So for me, I really look for that. However, I struggle with people being honest and like giving that to me, and then I assume that other people want that as well. So I feel like I have a big, just like separation from people in how I'm being, translated and everything. And so I have to constantly remind myself that not everybody likes criticism and people don't want to necessarily hear the things that I have to say, but I do want to hear the things that they don't want to say.
Yeah, Victoria, I think Josh would agree with this, that, we definitely appreciate, helpful criticism. And, I think, you have a good friend when they can come up to you and be like, hey, your breath stinks. Put a mint in your mouth. Yes. I really appreciate it when someone does that for me. Like Mariah will come up to me and be like, "Hey, you might want to chew some gum."
Whenever someone offers me gum, I always accept it because I assume my breath is awful. I'm in the constant state of perpetual fear of halitosis for some reason.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. But even from readers, like I appreciate hearing the different points of views to help me make sure that I'm considering all sides, because that's something that I really kind of pride myself on, is being able to kind of look at a situation through different lenses and being able to make a good decision based on those different opinions. So yeah, I certainly welcome that. Now, I agree with you too. You don't want to give criticism to someone who didn't ask for it. And certainly if you don't know the person, they're not your friend, they're not in that primary circle, you wouldn't want to go up to them and be like, hey, your breath stinks, have a mint. You would want to approach that situation much differently. But what I will say, Victoria, the one thing that helps me whenever I'm giving any criticism to anyone is when I avoid using the word you. So I will never say, maybe to Josh I will say, hey, your breath stinks, and like in that situation. But let's take that example. If I'm going to go to someone who is that I first met and their breath stinks, so I would approach that in the way of like, hey, I know that if my breath stunk, I would really want someone to tell me. Is that something that you would want someone to do for you?
Right.
And you can kind of position it that way. Like, again, like when you use the word you use it in an ambivalent or in a complimentary way, never in a negative way. Always use I if you're saying something negative. It's a very good way to help people not feel so defensive.
Take ownership.
Yeah, and it doesn't put blame on the other person. You. If you can kind of put it on yourself, it makes the criticism a lot easier to digest.
I think we need to be honest, too, about this, Ryan, with Victoria. Is she says she likes criticism, or she wants criticism. No, you don't. You don't want criticism. What you want is the outcome that criticism provides you. So we need to take a step beyond criticism. You don't like criticism because criticism is not necessarily good or bad. Most criticism is nonsense. It's vapid. It's trite. It doesn't make any sense. It's trolls on the internet. Especially as you put yourself out there more and more and more, and you're going to get criticized more. So, Victoria, what you want isn't criticism. You said you want to be more self-aware. You want to develop. You want to grow is the word I would use. And the criticism helps you do that. So really, if you want to give criticism to other people, it's not because it would be kind of rude to just want to criticize other people. That makes you a critic. And I have very little use for critics. I have a lot of use for friends who want to add value to my life. In fact, I surround myself with people who I trust their opinion. Even when it's different from mine, I'll reach out for that kind of feedback. So instead of maybe providing criticism to the people around you, what if you were able to provide feedback and position it in a way, frame it in a way that helped them become more self-aware, more developed, help them grow as an individual? Wouldn't that be a lot better than simply criticizing them? Because if you're just criticizing for the sake of criticizing, well, then you are a seagull. And we have an essay on our website about this called Seagulls. I'm going to read a quick excerpt from that. Criticism is inevitable unless you do nothing important with your life. But whenever you put yourself out there, whenever you expose your ideas to the world, be it via social media, blogs, or business meetings, you're effectively wearing a sign that says, "Criticize me." Of course, some criticism is beneficial. Feedback from people we respect helps us grow. Other criticism, however, is toxic. The most virulent example is the cynical internet troll. Trolls are like seagulls. They fly in, crap all over you, and they fly away. They're too stupid to understand the implications of their own actions. Truth be told, most critics bring nothing to the table. They simply project their own insecurities and add zero value to the conversation. And if we listen to them, their toxicity permeates our thoughts, making it difficult to create anything worthwhile. So, you have two choices. Either create and be criticized, or hide from meaningful work because you're scared of a little bird poop. Personally, I'd rather cover my head and craft something worth criticizing. I just think that's something worth thinking about here is if we're going to be creating, then yes, we do want that feedback that is helpful. But from whom? not from everyone. There's 7 billion people in the world. You don't want feedback from everyone. You want from people that you trust. You value their opinion. Surround yourself with people who can give you that feedback that you need. And when you are that role, when you're fulfilling that role for someone else, provide the feedback in a way that is not a critique, but it is truly feedback in a way that they can use or don't have to use, but in a way that may help them grow as well. And ultimately, when in doubt, listen. Listen to what other people have to say, but also listen to what they're experiencing. That will help you shape your feedback more effectively. And I think feedback is basically only one way to strengthen your relationships. And Ryan and I often talk about relationships because it's one of the 5 core values that we focus on. And so, Victoria, I would love to send you a copy of our book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. That book is the first book we wrote. We wrote it back in 2011, a long time ago now. But we wrote a second edition last year and updated basically every page of that book. It's our shortest book as well. It's, I think, 130 pages roughly. And it covers the 5 values, and health, relationships, passion, growth, and contribution are the 5 values that we hold as core values. And relationships, a big part of that is providing feedback and critiques when it's appropriate. And we hope that can help you find out when that is appropriate. The good news is that one just came out on audiobook as well, an updated version of the audiobook. So there was an old version from 5 years ago, but we updated this version last year, print and ebook. So we'll send you either one of those, or if you want the audiobook version, Sean, if you can give her an Audible code to download that book. It's read by the very talented narrator of ours, Justin Malik. He's a really great guy. He runs a podcast called Optimal Living Daily, where sometimes he reads our essays and other essays from other people on the internet, like Derek Sivers, but he read the entire book. In fact, he's reading all 3 of our books. Essentials already out there, and the newest one here with Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life is out there. Victoria, I hope you find value in that book, especially the relationships chapter. It'll help you decide when is the most appropriate time to give feedback to the people you care about. Well, we'd love to hear what you have to say, folks. So if you have a comment about noise or any of the callers' questions today, including minimalism tips for how you handle the noise in your life, then leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839. Of course, we'll air our favorite comments and tips at the end of our next episode. And here's a tip for you. Make sure you write down your message before you call in. It will help you articulate your point, and of course, it will increase your chance of being on the podcast.
All right, let's move on to our hashtag Ask the Minimalists lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
We are on Twitter and Instagram @TheMinimalists and Facebook.com/TheMinimalists. And on all 3 of those platforms, Ryan, we try to avoid adding to the noise, because those can be some really noisy places. So we're constantly asking ourselves before we send out a tweet or a Facebook post or a picture, is this going to add value to someone else's life? If not, then we delete it. We don't send it out there. We share a lot of different things on social media, but we also answer some questions. And so during this lightning round, Ryan and I, we do our best to each answer a question with just a short, shareable, less than 140 character response, and then we'll put those responses to we call them minimal maxims. We'll put those in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like.
All right, our first question is from Mary. How do you deal with restaurants who have TVs on and loud music playing at the same time? Do you just stay away? I guess I have been to restaurants like that. I was just trying to think, though, like, you got TV blaring and music blaring at the same time. Like, that is...
James Bar is that way.
That just seems like a crappy environment.
Yeah.
Their TVs are turned down, though, right? Like,
I think you're right. Yeah. But I was there this weekend, and it was packed. It was after the
Grizz game,
the Grizz, and Montana State was out here for it. So like, it was
really?
Just, it was
oh man, I missed the big game.
Yeah, I was at James' bar, and it was the same sort of scenario here, where the TVs are on, music's playing, and everyone around me was just and I just had to leave. We left early because I couldn't handle it. So what do you do, Ryan? What's your answer?
I typically avoid TV-filled restaurants unless I'm there to watch football.
Yeah, I think my short answer is yes. The first step in turning down the volume is actually avoiding the noise. At the very least, turn your back to the noise. I quite often do that. If I'm at a place and there are TVs everywhere, I'll just make sure that I'm positioned in the place where I can't stare at it. Because I find the glowing screens mesmerizing.
It's distracting.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then, of course, by paying attention to that, what am I doing? I'm ignoring the things that are most important to me, like my partner or the people I'm with.
Our next question is from Casper. What's the forgotten value of noise and static? Noise isn't always bad. I love going to concerts. Lots of noise there.
Yeah, I think for me, I had to think about this question because I think it's a fair question. We don't often flip questions around on their head and say, well, is there actually value here? And for me, my answer is the noise helps us appreciate the quiet. There's a David Foster Wallace analogy, I guess. If you're whistling Mozart at a Metallica concert, you won't hear it, right? Because the Metallica concert's going on. And I think it's the same thing here is you hear all that noise and you're like, well, now if I remove myself from that, I can actually appreciate the quietness and I can get back to whistling Mozart.
Teresa's question, how do we encourage friends and family to put away and silence phones during get-togethers? You know, I've been to plenty of get-togethers where the invite specifically asks for no phones to be present during the event. I love that idea.
Yeah, for me, I would just say, for more meaningful get-togethers, leave your phone in the car, suggest a phone-free evening, and keep a phone basket near the door.
Or better yet, you could do one of those bowls and put all the phones in there and then fill it with water. And then you freeze them.
We should try that. You can do that during your game nights.
Okay, seriously, don't go do that. All right, our next question is from Hudson. What are some practical ways for silencing mental noise, negative thoughts, racing thoughts, etc.? Meditate.
Yeah, indeed. My answer is not as pithy as that, but I would just say, are your negative thoughts useful? If so, take action. If not, let go.
Nice. Ooh, this question is from Being Conscious.
Yeah.
It's interesting how different noise levels can affect productivity. How noisy do you like your environment while writing? I like being in a coffee shop. It's not the noise, though. It's the movement of the people I enjoy.
For me, I think 3 words sums up how I like my writing environment. Silence reigns supreme. Okay, let's move on to our added value portion of the show. This is where we each recommend something that has added value to our lives recently.
Yeah, I think this is very an appropriate recommendation for this episode. Mariah and I have a essential oil diffuser. I don't even know the brand of it, so there's not going to be a link to the diffuser we have. But if you are someone who has a lot of distracting things going on in your household, it actually does make you feel a little calm, just like smelling the frankincense or whatever fragrance.
Eucalyptus.
Yeah, whatever fragrance Mariah puts in there for the day.
Now, eucalyptus is great. I mean, it's really calming.
It really is calming. Yeah, like I was really shocked by it, like because it doesn't fill the whole house. It's just like it's a small one.
Were you have in the bedroom or?
No, it's actually in the kitchen. But I typically will sit at the counter with my laptop if I am, checking social media or doing emails or writing or whatever. And just sitting on the counter, it was the other day. We've had it for a couple weeks, but it wasn't until the other day I was sitting there and I was like, what is that awesome smell? I'm like, oh, yeah, that must be the diffuser.
Yeah.
And it really was like a nice, like peaceful feeling. I mean, it's not this like magic bullet. but it certainly helps.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard there's a podcast I listen to from Ben Greenfield, and he talks about that a lot, using essential oils and which ones to use. And when you go to a steam room, a lot of times they have eucalyptus, and you can, because it stays in the air in that steam, and you can breathe it in, which is pretty awesome. For me, I have a few things to recommend. A new song just came out that I just spent the weekend with Bex. We didn't have Ella this past weekend, and I swear we just played it on repeat, and it was good. John Mayer, fellow Montanan, has a new song out. It's called Love on the Weekend. I think I sent you the B-side to that. He did this like jokey I have a big shirt song. Yeah. It was on social media. So I was doing the float tank on Monday, and that song was stuck in my head.
Oh, really?
I've got a big shirt. I mean, it was just so...
It's such a ridiculous
video. It was
video.
So ridiculous. But the actual song, the Love on the Weekend, is a really great song. And speaking of songs, there's a band called Brother Cephas. Seth, who works at the coffee shop that we're partners in down in St. Pete. And last time I was down in St. Pete, I went to a Brother Cephas concert. He's the lead singer for that band, and they have an EP, and it's called Noise.
Oh, wow.
And so at the end of this, Sean, I'd love to that song is a great song. It's a little, their music's heavier than what I would typically listen to. You know, people who know me know I listen to my equivalent of the theme song that we play from Peter Doran is generally what I listen to, either that or 90s hip hop. But Noise is a little bit heavier and noisy, which is appropriate, but it's a great song, a great EP. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, but we'll play out the episode with that at the very end. I already talked about some of my recommendations with floating and cryo. I shared that whole day trip to Spokane on social media, so I've been doing something interesting with the Minimalist account on Instagram, doing this hashtag, the Minimalists City Finds. And so anytime we go to a new city or whatever, I'll just take a picture of the coffee shop we go to, or if I'm in LA or in St. Petersburg or Dayton, Ohio, or New York City, and sharing some different stuff there. So you'll find a bunch of different things that add value to our lives if you just search that hashtag on Instagram, the Minimalists City Finds. Beck and I we posted 3 or 4 photos while we were out there. And, last thing I'm doing, check out my phone. Let me show you this, Ryan. Do you notice anything different about my phone? Go ahead and open up something.
Everything's blacked out.
Blacked out?
Black and whited out.
It's grayscale. So let's put a link to this, Sean, in the show notes. The Atlantic did this 3 or 4 minute video about by putting your phone on grayscale, it radically reduces the impulsive behavior, and they've done some tests on it. Because pull up Instagram.
All of the icons are trying to be the flashiest,
right. Well,
touch me. This is an icon you want to press.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you can't go to Instagram now and feel it's just kind of boring. If you pull up an app and you're like, it's all grayscale.
Yeah, even the pictures and
everything's
stuff.
Grayscale.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing a holiday phone and media fast. So between Thanksgiving, which we're recording this the day before Thanksgiving. This will be out after Thanksgiving. But between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I have my phone on grayscale. I unfollowed a bunch of just places that I'm basically on a low info diet, so radically reduced any news or anything I had. I also removed from my phone a ton of apps. No more Twitter. I haven't had Facebook for a long time, but no Periscope, Instagram. I've just deleted a bunch of apps from my phone. And any apps that I haven't used in the last 30 days basically are gone, and also the distracting apps. Any social media is completely gone from my phone. Doesn't mean I won't use social media. I just have to be at a computer, I have to log in, do it more intentionally. And like Ryan said, checking it once a day. You mentioned maybe checking around 5 o'clock or whatever. I find that to be far more productive than constantly reaching for my phone. The average person reaches for their phone over 150 times per day now, and ever since moving my phone over to grayscale, it's just not entertaining anymore, especially once I removed all those supposedly entertaining apps from my phone. So I'm going to try that out for a while. If anyone else wants to try that out and let us know how it goes for them, let me know on social media. Eventually, I'll get around to seeing that for sure. All right, let's move on to right here, right now. This is where we get to talk about what's going on in the lives of the minimalists. We've done a bunch of recent interviews. Some of my favorites recently. I did Lewis Howes. He has a podcast called School of Greatness. And, man, I've gotten more feedback on that interview than just about anything that we've done. There's so many people really. At the end of it, he asked, like, what are if you were to die and your website's gone, your books are gone, you could just leave behind 3 truths for the world to hear, 3 things that you want to communicate, what would they be? It was a great question, and I felt like I gave a really good answer to that. So Lewis Howes.
It's a great interview, man.
Also, I was on Tom Woods' podcast recently. So Tom Woods does 5 episodes a week. He's a libertarian and he watched the documentary with his 4 kids, his 4 daughters, and really enjoyed the documentary and the lessons. And he's not necessarily sympathetic with everything to do with minimalism, but found a lot of value in sharing the documentary with his kids. And so I spent half an hour talking to him about that and libertarianism. And I also was on The Art of Charm with Jordan Harbinger, and enjoyed that interview for sure. We got a bunch of other ones as well. You can just go to theminimalists.com/media, see a bunch of TV interviews that Ryan and I have done, also some print and radio interviews, other podcast interviews on there as well. Also, as you know, and this is appropriate for the noise episode, we don't clutter our podcast or our website. We don't clutter them with advertisements, but there are a bunch of ways that you can support the minimalists, and we don't ask for this often, but I figure I'd throw this out here for this one. You can donate a few bucks to theminimalists.com/donate. You can, or if you can't do that, that's okay. You can still share our podcasts, our essays, or our TEDx talks with your friends and family. Or you could even just leave us a well-thought-out positive review. You can review our podcast on iTunes, which helps us reach more people. You can review our books on Amazon, and you can review our documentary, Minimalism, a documentary about the important things. You can review that on IMDb. That'd be really helpful, or on Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play. I mean, we just really thank you for that support, however you're supporting us. If it's just listening, if it's sharing, if it's reviewing, if it's donating, we really appreciate it. What else here? The holidays, they are right around the corner. Ryan and I just did that gift-giving episode. That was one of my favorite episodes that we've done so far. It was number 38 in our feed. But we also have a couple of upcoming things. We have a podcast about the holidays. It's coming up soon, so you can subscribe to our podcast if you don't already to check that out. And we have a few essays about the holiday shopping season that are coming out. And we also have 2 photo tours. Ryan did a photo tour of his home recently. I'll be doing one soon. If you want to see a photo tour of my home and all of these holiday essays, you can just get our email newsletter. Just go to theminimalists.com. At the top, there is a box that says email newsletter. And just type your email there, and we will never, ever send you any spam, because spam is gross. Lastly, you can hire the minimalists. So Ryan and I are going to do more speaking gigs next year. We typically do 1 speaking gig per quarter, and we do a ton of preparation. We're working on some new material, and we're also working on a new presentation for old material as well. And so we're sort of the best of both worlds there. And so if you want us to speak to your university or your organization, you can go to theminimalists.com/speaking. We're going to try to move that up to about 1 speaking gig a month. And so that will start to fill up pretty soon. If you're interested in having us speak to your university or organization, theminimalists.com/speaking. We'd love to see you.
Finally, here are some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners.
Hi, this is Anna calling from Brooklyn, New York. I loved your show about clutter and kids, and I wanted to add 2 suggestions that have really helped me. The first is for relatives who want to buy your kid a lot of gifts and won't adhere to a 1-gift rule, to use a little rhyme, which is something you want, something you need, something to read. I used that at Christmas and for my son's birthday, and so he only gets 3 gifts. And I find that it really helps. The second tip that I use is to get 7 bins or baskets with days of the week. written on them, and your child can only play with the bin, which is for the day of the week it is. And not only does this keep the toys off the floor and the room clutter-free, it also makes those toys really special because they only see them once a week, and it ensures that they actually play with the toys that they have.
Hi, Joshua and Ryan. My name is Jenny, and I'm from Columbia, Missouri, and I've recently found your podcast, your website, and I'm a thrilled, almost 69-year-old grandma. So thank you so much for all you're doing. I just have 2 comments. I have a suggestion for other grandparents about simplifying Christmas. I did this several years ago in terms of grandchildren. So for each grandchild, I designate a certain amount of money into thirds. So it could be 3 $1 bills or 3 $5 bills, whatever your means. And the instructions are that they can take 1/3 and buy whatever they want, just blow it. And the second idea is that, or the second portion is that they save it, put into savings. And then the third portion, they must donate. Pick a charity or organization to donate, because that's the real meaning of the season. The other comment I want to make has to do with, I think one of your podcasts mentioned, what do we do with photos? And I have been, I've been searching and very emotional about my photos, but thanks to your podcast, I now know I can go out and buy a scanner, which I've ordered, and I'm going to learn how to use it and scan my photos, and then I will repurpose or donate or sell my scanners so that it doesn't clutter my life.
Hey guys, my name is Krista from Huron. I'd like to thank you for another avenue of sharing the minimalism movement with my family. I have a husband who is slowly starting to get on board. He has seen, because of my simplifying, he has seen my anxiety levels greatly decrease. I'd also, again, too, thank you. This, like I said, it gives me another avenue to show my 12-year-old son, who also has anxiety, how he can simplify his life going forward.
All right, y'all, that's it for this episode. If you have a question for the Minimalists, give us a call, 406-219-7839. And if you leave here with just one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
All right, here's a track from Brother Cephas. It's called Noise.